everyone, and welcome to another of the Highland Dancing interviews as part of the Cowal Virtual Gathering interview series. I'm Rachel McLagan in Scotland, and I am absolutely delighted to be talking with an icon from our Highland dancing world. It's four-time world champion and leading lady of our global community, none other than the fabulous Miss Sheena MacDonald. Sheena, it's lovely to see you. How are you doing?
Fine, yeah.
Are you well?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Good.
Yes. Once we get this over, I'll be absolutely fine.
Now, obviously, at this time of year, normally we would all be gearing up for making that journey, getting on the ferry and heading over to Dunoon. So we've all been, I'm sure, reminiscing and just remembering all the times that we've spent in the Cowell Arena. And I would love to hear, Sheena, about your first time at Cowell, your first memories of walking into the arena, how old you were, the things that happened on that day. Can you tell us a bit about it?
That was a long time ago, Rachel. A long time. I was about 11, I think, when I first danced at Cowell. My first impression was the main stand. It doesn't look any different today than it did then, although I'm sure there's a lot of alterations for health and safety. And then all I can remember is the platforms, uncovered, and the judges' tables, no bus shelters to shelter them. There was no changing facilities. You had to change wherever you could until Highland dancers found one underneath the grandstand. Trust Highland dancers.
Of course.
When we danced at Cowell, we had numbers just like we are today, but you didn't go up in numerical order. You went up whenever you liked. So you could do your fling like the sixth step, okay? And then you move to another platform to do maybe your swords. And you all know we like to get the swords over fast, so you could dance the third set for your swords. The dancers moved, not the judges. The judges were just a single judge for the qualifying events. And then you would move again for your chantreuse and then your reels. And you only danced on the Friday. It's only juveniles on the Friday. And you only danced till you were 14. And when you become 15, you had to move into the adults. And I can remember dancing at Cowell, I think the second year, and we had a judge called Mr. Mulholland, and he walked around the platform. He judged you from the side, he judged you from the back, and then he walked back round to the front. So you did not know where he was looking. So that was kind of scary, when you first started. And then I remember the sawdust, always the sawdust. But the thing was, when the sawdust blew over your swords, nobody could see the swords. So the judges couldn't tell whether you touched them or not, because you couldn't see whether you touched them. So it was quite good. Then you went into the adults at 15. And at that time, the adults were a much older group because it was just after the war. So they were catching up on competitions. So I won the Juvenile Worlds in 1951. And that was the first year J L MacKenzie won the Adult Worlds. So he still danced in 1952 and 1953. So that meant 15-year-olds were dancing against him. Wow. And like the Bobby Watson and people like that, you had no hope of doing anything. And then he danced for 2 years. And then the next 2 years, it was Catriona Buchanan. And then I went up for the next 3 years. But the adults danced in the morning. They qualified in the morning. And then they had to do the finals in the afternoon. And then the World Championships, you had to do an 8-step fling, 4-on-1 sword, and an 8-and-2 chantreuse. I remember one year as a juvenile, we didn't get medals. We got prizes. And it was all the prizes from the local businessmen. And I remember getting pearls, and I still have the pearls to this day. The funny thing was, one of the pipers, solo piping, got silver-backed brushes, and he didn't have a hair in his head. So that caused quite a laugh, because we all knew him. He was an ex-Glasgow policeman. So as I said, the adults had to do it all in the one day. So that was quite hard. That was quite hard, especially if you didn't have any covering. You know, this was,
Of
oh,
course.
it's a long time. Yeah, it was a few years after that before the covering started coming in. No lineups. You just danced in the rain. You stood in the rain. You ate your pieces in the rain. And yeah, it was something else at that time of the year. It really was.
Yeah.
But it's still got the magic today that it had then. And we didn't have
Oh,
as many we didn't have as many championships. So Cowell was really extra special. Although it can't be any more special today than it was then, because it's still very special.
of course. So, and was your whole dancing year sort of geared towards that final moment at Cowell? Was that was the culmination of your year, just as it is now?
That was it. Everything finished at Cowell. There was nothing after Cowell. Everything finished Cowell. Our year started like April and finished in August. We did not have the championships that they have today. You know, I didn't dance a lot inside without being big-headed. The inside was for dancers that maybe weren't going to win at the games. So I wasn't allowed to dance. I was asked not to come back. So it wasn't a backhanded compliment. In fact, I was
I
asked
was
not
going
to
to
come
say
back.
it's a bit of a backhanded compliment, isn't it?
In fact, the third year I won it at Cowell, the Highland Dance convener then said to me, after he congratulated me, he said, "We're hoping you're not thinking of coming back next year." We had already decided that I wasn't, if I was lucky enough to win it, I wasn't going back the next year anyway. My father wanted to watch the athletes.
Was that it? His time as a dance dad, that was he'd done his shift. It was time to watch the athletics.
Yes, he wanted to watch the athletics. So
It
that
must
was,
have been nice to finish on a really high note though, with third world championship. Can you remember your last dance at Cowell? Can you remember what that moment was like on the boards?
it was wonderful because I only qualified in one dance. That year I didn't qualify in all the dances, and you had to have a first or a second to dance in the finals. So by the time it got to the Chantreuse, I still hadn't qualified. So that was kind of scary. And we danced one at a time. We
Wow.
danced the final one at a time with 3 judges because the numbers to return back were kept small.
Right.
But once the dancers all started coming back, and anyone could dance at Cowell, there was no pre-premier or premier dancer. Everybody danced at Cowell. So that was something different. The last year, yes, I think I was shaking more the last year than I was the first year. But yes, it just felt wonderful. It just felt sad. I knew it was going to be my last year, but I still competed for 6 years after I stopped at Cowell. So yes, it was quite something. It was quite something.
Yeah. So many great stories and memories in there. I'm now of course we have this massive stage and it's right in front of the grandstand and everybody's looking down at you. Was that the setup when you were competing as well? I'm just trying to imagine what it must be
Yes,
like to be the only dancer on the board in front of that grandstand.
yes. But the platform was only half the size. It was just one platform. There wasn't 2 the way we is today. We just had the one. So yes, it was quite funny because my mother would watch my fling and then she would disappear while I did my swords. My father had to take her for a cup of tea, and then he went over and said, "Okay, she's through it. She hasn't kicked," and she would come back to watch my Chantreuse. So
I
that
think
was,
there are
yes,
probably quite a lot of dance mums that do that now as
yes,
well.
I think so. I think so. I think so. But no, it's just something special. It's Cowell, and Cowell will never change. The magic is still there, even after all these years. I still get goosebumps walking into the park.
Oh,
Still
absolutely.
get goosebumps.
And I'm
So
also keen to know because you said that you didn't dance in numerical order. So how did you go about deciding who got to go on the board first? Did you flip a coin or was it just the first one to get to the side of the platform?
Well, no, they still scrutineered. They still scrutineered it. You know, you still got your first, second, and third. But if I got first in the Chantreuse, then I was qualified. If you got second in the Chantreuse, you qualified. And that was the way the scrutineers did it at that time, until the board came into being and they started to regulate things. It didn't happen overnight because nobody likes change, especially when you've been doing it for years. But that's the way the scrutineered it. People got first or second. And because they kept the numbers small, because the pipe bands had to come on. And at that time, the pipe bands come on very early. So you had to go off that platform to let all these pipers walk around the platform, walk around the arena. So yes, it was different, but I think the scrutineering is so much better, and a lot more dancers get a chance to qualify. Whereas before, I'm quite sure there were some really good dancers didn't get a chance to dance for the finals. You know, so it's really, really much better. Took a long time, but I think it's much better. It is much better.
There has been such a change and such an evolution in all aspects of the games. But you mentioned there about the pipe bands coming in, and that's, you know, that image of, you know, the arena filled with the mass pipe bands and the march past, you know, that's a really, you know, it's sort of spine tingling, isn't it? Did you, the years that you won, did you march around with the bands and parade down the street? Is that something you got to do?
I walked down the street with the band, with the Glasgow Police Pipe Band, until I heard somebody saying, "Oh, look, the pipe band's won the trophy." And I thought, hey, that's my trophy, not theirs. So I walked off. I went up a side street and got away from the pipe band.
And there was always that street parade was such a, you know, a real sort of party atmosphere, a real moment of, you know, celebration, and that's still such a big part of Cowell weekend, isn't it? Did you have sort of parties with your families after to celebrate your wins? What did you do?
My father went to every pub in Dunoon. My father didn't drink, okay, to find champagne, because he wanted to fill the trophy with champagne so that we could all go. So he finally got what he wanted. So we all had to drink this champagne. It was absolutely disgusting. Didn't like the taste at all. But yes, we celebrated as a family, because my sister taught me.
Of course.
She was my teacher, my sister. Yes, she was the only one I've ever had. And then remember, we had to dance with the plaids and the sporrans and the balmorals as well. So we had all that. So when it was wet, it got very heavy. But I did not have a feather in my hat. I did not wear a feather. Everybody says, you must have worn a feather. No, I did not wear a feather. I always wore a balmoral. Even when the board brought out the feminine thing, I still wore a balmoral. Definitely not, because I had terrible hair.
I was going to say, in some of those years when it was raining, I bet the Balmoral actually was a bit of a blessing to have.
It was.
You talked about the obviously the outfit being different and the dances being completely different. And 8 and 2 Chantreuse, I can just imagine if we suggested bringing that back into championships now. How did you prepare and you know, practice and get yourself ready for, you know, a championship event like Cowell, and prepare yourself for dancing all of those steps? And I think, am I right in saying that there were days where you would have danced a hornpipe at Cowell as well?
I remember dancing the hornpipe, but just for the first couple of years. I don't remember it after that. I think, but then the numbers were beginning to get bigger, you know, because travel was getting better. So, and I think they found it was taking too long because they had to wait for you to change. So I think maybe that was the reason they dropped the hornpipe.
So after you won that first juvenile title, did you then set your sights on the adults? You know, did you look up to J L MacKenzie and Bobby Watson and Katrina Buchanan and think, that's where I want to be? Was that your goal at that time?
To be quite honest, Rachel, I just wanted to please my sister. If she said good, then it was good. She wasn't one for giving praise. So I don't know whether I set my sights that way or not. I mean, I can come off parks, arenas with trophies, and she would just tell me what I'd done wrong. So the first time she said, "Well done, you deserve that," was the year I won the Juvenile Worlds. So I think yes. After about 2 or 3 years in the adults, you began to think, well, maybe I could win the adults as well. So I was 19 when I won the adults. So that wasn't too long in the adult section. By that time, the age group had changed. There wasn't this 20, 30-year gap between the 15-year-olds and the adults. It had settled down. The people that had missed all of the competitions while the war was on, they had all decided, because it wasn't money and the adults wanted money, so they only went where they could get money prizes. So some of them didn't just want the champ. But yes, I think by the time I got into the adults for about 2 or 3 years, you thought, I may, let's see if I can go for the worlds. But yes, but as I said, my one aim in life was to please my sister, just to have her say that was well done, because she never told you had danced well.
You always have that as a dancer, don't you? You want to please your teacher because you know how much they've invested time in you, and that's what you're working towards. So that year when you were 19, did you feel that year did you have a feeling about it coming into the results? That you'd performed your best, that things they'd worked for you that day, or was it a bit of a surprise? How was it waiting for those results?
It was a bit of a surprise because there was still a lot of older adults still dancing, and you thought, I know one in particular thought it was going to be her turn. So you still had that feeling that maybe it wasn't your time. And there was one very good male dancer called Gordon Yates, and I thought he would have won it first. But he didn't win it till after I stopped. So that was quite good as well. But he was a beautiful dancer. So you always had the competition. But I thought my sister said I danced well that year, so that was okay for me. And then I think when you keep repeating, you go back the next year and you hope you'll win it. The third year, I would think I was really, really worried. But if I didn't win it, then I didn't win it. But yes, I think by the time I got to 19, I thought, yeah, I might stand a chance. Yes. And Gordon Yates won it the year after me, so that was okay.
Oh, that's nice then. It rounded off that story quite nicely, didn't it? And then you have come back to Cowell as a judge as well. How did that experience differ from being there as a competitor? What did it feel like to sit in the chair as a judge?
Well, we talked about earlier when you said you went onto the platform and you saw all those faces from the stand. It's when you're sitting judging and they're breathing down the back of your neck. Those 100 people judging, half of them are only qualified, the other 50 are not qualified, but that they're going to be doing it anyway. Once you get started, it was fine, but yeah, I found that. And then the year that 90% of the judges at Cowell were all former world champions. So that was something else. Some of them didn't come on because they wanted their pupils to dance. But that year at Cowell committee wanted everyone who was on the park, if they had won a former world champion, they had to go and put their name down. And everybody was on the platform. All former world champions were on the platform. And if you've ever watched Christine Lacey, which I'm sure you have on Facebook, Christine has a photograph at the back of her, and it's all these people lined up, and it's all former world champions. So it's quite stretching right across 2 platforms, all these people that had won the world championships and were still doing it. So yeah, but the first year was grim. Oh boy. You don't realize, you've judged for quite a while, but you don't realize the tension of judging Cowell, because everybody wants that. Everybody wants that number 1 position. And you're worried that you might miss something. I think it's a lot easier now to judge a championship because everyone dances the same. The rotation of the steps haven't changed. So everybody is, mean, the balance step is still the fifth step. It was still the fifth step when I danced. But, and most people followed that rotation. But I would rather judge a championship than judge beginners, especially the beginners reel, because you never know what they're going to do. Whereas a championship is easier because everyone knows the technical stuff. Everyone's doing the same steps, and you can only judge them because they put something of themselves into it. Although they're all doing the same thing, like you dance one way and somebody else will dance another way, still doing the same thing, but you're putting how you interpret into it. And I think that's what makes the World Championships hard. It's not the actual technicalities, it's how you dance it. And I use the word dance because I think for a while their dancing was, they were like little robots we got for a while. But I think that's all coming back in again. I definitely think so. But all good dancers, there's just something different about them. They've just got, it comes from your passion of dancing, which everybody has. You have to have been doing, well, have I been doing it this long? Yeah, there has to be something. But I think there's so much more for dancers now. You know, they know they can go out and judge, whereas when you were competing, you couldn't judge. You had to give up competing before you could judge. And once you became a judge, you couldn't compete. But now you can do both. So it's, yes, but to go back to dancing at Cowell, it's how you interpret the music. Can you interpret the music? Is it just 1, 2, 3, 4? But there's different ways of doing it. So that's what makes the champions, which you will win.
I think you're so right, and that's, as you say, you know, at Cowell everyone's dancing the same steps. The standard is just, you know, absolutely incredible. And it's almost, I always think it's almost as if everybody finds another level on that finals day, don't they? And that's where the real passion comes out, and the individuality in each dancer really shines through. And it's difficult to judge, but it's also a joy to be up close and be able to see, you know, these dancers reach their very best at the right moment, isn't it? So it's a tricky one, but it's a special day.
You're willing them not to make mistakes, because I once heard somebody say she wouldn't have got that if she hadn't made a mistake, which is not very nice, you know. So personally, I just want everyone to get through it the best they can, and then hopefully the best one will win. Hopefully.
Absolutely. And of course, it's you're there at Cowell every year as a spectator now as well. Do you prefer being in the grandstand as a spectator to being in the chair as the judge?
Oh yes, I do anything. Yes, but I think once you have pupils dancing, you're still dancing, if you know what I mean. You know yourself, you're still willing your own pupils to do good. I must say I don't like the grandstand, or sorry, Ronnie, because I don't like not having a back. You know, and people walking past you and kicking you, and you've got a white jacket on, you're dirty by the time you get there. I prefer down in front of the grandstand rather than up in the grandstand. Can't see as much. And I think as a spectator, you suddenly realize that there's something else going on in the park, not just dancing. You know, you realize that there's heavies and there's piping and all the rest of it. But then you focus back on who's dancing. Yeah, it's a difficult thing, but there's still magic in the air. Definitely still magic in the air.
There is, and I think that it was a lovely message just in what you said earlier about, you know, willing everybody to do their best and to get through every dance. Because I think it's a very intimidating thing, isn't it, to stand on the platform as a dancer and this whole arena around you and the pipe band and the heavies and the audience, and you know, and it is a very, very kind of pressurized environment. So it's nice to know that as spectators and judges, everybody's actually willing you on.
Oh yeah, and I think they are. I think genuinely people want everyone to do well. There's the odd, you'll get the odd ones in any situation at all. But yeah, I think everyone's willing everybody to do their best. And then you hope that whoever they choose, it was your first. You know, it's nice when it comes up, it's your choice as well as theirs. But yes, and I think coming from my own pupils, they just think the air is electric. They're, you know, so I'm glad that it's been passed down from level to level, from age to age, that they still got that electrical feeling. And as I said earlier, I still get it when I walk into Cowell. And I love watching all the kids running onto that park. As soon as the gates open, you get this of dancers and all eager faces and things. Yeah, Cowell is different. Cowell is magic, definitely.
It really is. It's such a special moment in a dancer's career, you know, coming into Cowell for the first time or the 20th time. But what would your advice be to dancers? You've obviously had pupils yourself compete at Cowell. What do you tell them to help them kind of cope with all of that excitement and adrenaline on the day?
It's just to feel confident in themselves, and not to worry about who they're competing against. Some people come in and will say, "Oh, look, Rachel McLagan's dancing today, I won't get a prize." It is to say that, well, if that's how you feel, then it's up to you to be better than Rachel McLagan. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just using you because you're there. And it's just to focus on their own abilities, focus that they have worked hard. If they haven't worked hard, then they should be nervous. If they've worked hard, confident in themselves, go onto that platform and just focus. Never mind who's dancing beside you. Don't be afraid. It could be you, it could be Colleen Rintamaki, it could be anyone. Is to say, I put the same work in and I'm just as good as they are. I mean, it's not true, but that's the way they should look at it. I'm just as good as anyone else, and I have every right to be on this platform. You know, just to be a bit sure of themselves and just have to work hard. That's what it is. The word practice comes into my mouth quite a lot. More practice, more practice, more practice. And that's basically all it is, but just to have the confidence and the passion.
Absolutely. It's practice and that bit of self-belief and knowing that you're doing what you love. Now, we used to have a lot of little Cowell traditions, and that's something we've been chatting around a lot in the last couple of weeks. You know, the places we used to go to eat and, you know, getting a bit of lucky white heather before we started. Did you and your family have any Cowell traditions that you used to make sure you did every year, anywhere you visited, or little rituals before you got there?
Yes, it's going to be quite funny for you to listen to this. First year I danced at Cowell, my sister put a dab of perfume behind my ear. And that was our tradition. Every year, my sister put a dab of perfume behind my ears. It worked.
I was going to say, it must have worked. What perfume was it? Can you remember?
But that was really all. That's really all. That's really all. Anything we did. Just the fact that you've got your own people rooting for you, and that's what you have to think about. Mm-hmm. Not to worry about anybody else. Just think about who's the people you know are your fans.
Of course.
Because there's plenty of others.
Absolutely. And it must have always been so nice to have your family there with you and all around you and willing you on and celebrating with you. Do you still have your gold medals, or what have you done with your World Championship medals?
My mother got my first one and made it into a ring for her. My sister got my second one, and I kept my third one, although I don't have it as a ring. I wear it in a chain around my neck. My father got my juvenile, because juvenile medal was different. Juvenile medal has a horseshoe around it. It was a special year for Cowell, and they made a special medal. And my father, when he wore a vest, a waistcoat, he would hang it in his watch chain. And that's how he wore my Juvenile World's medal. The rest I still have, but these three, yes, that's where they went. That's where those 4 medals went.
That's lovely. It's nice to see your family wearing them and just keeping that momentum with them, isn't it? It's because it really, they are just absolutely priceless and just such beautiful things to have.
Yes, both my sons have decided which one they want. Well, I've got 3 sons, but 2 of them have said, Andrew wants my juvenile medal because it's totally different. Nobody else will have one. And my oldest son wants my first one. So there you go. That's my medals. My granddaughter will probably have my next one. And there you go. So they'll still be in show somewhere or other, unless they put them into a drawer and forget they're there. Yes. Well, they've sorted it all out. Someone wants my Apple class. Not quite sure who wants my MBE, but we'll worry about that later on. But I think it's great. There's 4 of us, 5 of us had the MBE. I think it makes Highland dancing realize that it's not just little boys and girls up dancing with one hand up, hopping on the one leg, that they can actually attain this royal award. And I think it's good that dancers should realize that this can happen. And so I think it's quite good that there's been 5 of us, six actually have got the MBE, so it's good, and 4 of us are still kicking around. And I think that has to be good for Highland dancing. We're not just little boys and girls in tartan skirts hopping on one leg, one hand up. I think that's something else that they have to realise. This is something that is worthwhile doing. And
Absolutely.
Look at what they can do. They can, the overseas dancers can come and dance with their dancers can go and dance with their dancers. But everybody comes back to Cowell. Everybody's always at Cowell. Nobody, I don't think anybody would stay away for Cowell. I think they would always make sure they were back in this country. So we're back to Cowell again. The draw of Cowell. It's definitely a draw.
Absolutely. It just, as you say, it's fabulous to have the recognition, of MBEs, and we, all of us in Highland dancing, are so indebted to you and everybody that has done so much to get that recognition for Highland, and Cowell has been such a big part of that in giving us such an amazing platform to hold our leading event in the world. And just to sort of, I think that's a lovely place to finish off, and I would love it if you have just a couple of words, and you've sort of said them already a few times, but just to sort of summarize really what Cowell means as a competition, a championship, as a place in our Highland dancing world. How would you describe it, if you could, in a few words?
For me, it's everything. It's just magical, Rachel. I can't explain it any other way. It's just something everybody wants. Some people are quite happy to have a Cowell medal. That's their ambition, and that's fine. But it's just magical. It's just magical, and it's such an attraction, and it's such an important event in the Highland dancing competitions. It is the most important, and I hope it goes on and on and on, especially in Dunoon. Good.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sheena. It's fabulous to hear your stories about all of your experiences at Cowell. I'm sure everybody will really enjoy that. It's been lovely to chat to you, and thank you very much for setting such a fabulous example for us all.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I'm calmed down now, so I'll go and have a cup of coffee. Thank you very much.
Well deserved.